Here we are again. Look. Yeah, there we are. Hilda, great, blah, 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 Goodwood. So I've got to change the height on the suspension. On a proper car, I would pull a lever, or even just push a button. But this isn't a proper car. This is dinosaur technology. So I have to do it manually. So there we go. Front suspension on Hilda, on the Imp. Piddly little discs. My hands are small, and I could nearly get my hands across the span of those discs, but then these are off a Mark I Ford Fiesta. The original Hillman Imp discs would have been drums, which are even worse. So these don't work too bad now that I've actually got the right size. Oh, what's all coming off? Anyway, I have got a deadline. Doesn't look it, does it? So I'm raising the front suspension because I think it's too low. Because it's got swing axle type geometry. I mean, it does have independent wishbones, but it's the geometry, because the pivot point is right in the middle. The geometry is very much like a swing axle. So when the suspension's on droop, i.e. when you lift it off the ground, the wheels tuck in at the bottom, and you get massive positive camber. And if the suspension goes up in the arch, if it compresses, or if you have it low, you get negative camber. The top leans in, the bottom kicks out, and it drives like crap when it's like that. So what I want to do is I've raised the back slightly because I want to soften the suspension slightly. It's not going to be quite as high as that. It's because it's jacked up. But what I need to do is lift the front very slightly and then set it back down. But I'll do that on some scales. I'm going to corner weight it. Not properly corner weight. And racing teams are going to watch this and go, what on earth are you doing? Not proper corner weight. Well, it kind of is, but I can't adjust the rear. The springs are fixed on that. I can only adjust the front spring height, but the idea being that basically I want to know how heavy the car is. I've always wondered. But what I'll do, it will tell me the weight distribution, which should be near enough. I mean, I don't know what the actual percentages will be. I'm going to guess 65, 35, something like that. Yeah, I'm going to set that. So basically, you know, you would have all four corners dividing up the weight, 65% of it divided between the rear wheels and 35 between the front wheels. But what you want to make sure is that whatever half of 35 is, 17.5%. You ideally have 17.5 on each side. If you've got 20 here and 15 here, then you know that the suspension on this side is having to do more work than the suspension on that side. Now that might be because there's more weight on the car that side. Fine, there's not a lot you can do about that, but it might be because the suspension is set wrong. The preload on this spring might be higher than the one on that side, and you can adjust that. And if you adjust it, you set the weight balance better, and it'll make it handle better. That's the plan. So I can only adjust, you know, if you had a car with adjustable coilovers all round, you could adjust the back as well, you know, TVRs do. And if you do it on most cars, you have to disconnect the anti-roll bars as well, because that can fudge the numbers. But this doesn't have anti-roll bars, so I haven't got to do that. I need to preset the tyre pressures. Yeah, so I'm going to adjust this spring and everything, put the wheel back on, just stick a couple of bolts in it, put the scales underneath, lift the back up, put the back on, fire the scales up and see what is what and see how far out it is. Place your bets in the comments now. How much do you think Hilda will weigh? A standard Hillman Imp, for reference, is 725 kilos, I believe. Obviously the engine in Hilda is heavier than the standard one, probably by about 30 kilos or so, maybe slightly more, but Hilda has also lost a lot of weight at the back. Hilda has a carbon fibre engine cover, which has saved 5 kilos. Hilda doesn't have a battery in the back or radiator or anything like that. All that stuff is at the front. And although that makes the car heavier, it does improve the weight distribution. I'm doing the weight distribution today with an empty fuel tank, which is a mistake. I should have done it with a heavy one, but then I suppose this is the worst it will be because it's got an empty tank at the front. So there we go. I'm going to set this and then we'll get measuring. So I've got 2 days until Goodwood. I've made some progress. I haven't recorded everything I've done. There you go, so that's that lot that undone. normally it wouldn't be as loose as this, but there's absolutely zero preload on this at all. So I'm going to lift it up about 10 mil and see how it sits. It's about 10 mil higher at the back than it was. So, but yeah, I done the rear suspension this morning. I've bled in the brakes. I've set the brakes. I've set the handbrake. I've got to do the front. I've got to do the tracking, but you can't. There's no point doing the tracking until I've done the height, because changing the height of the suspension alters the tracking. So you don't want to set that until you're at the right height. Otherwise, you do it all over again. So I'm just going to wind this up. There we go. Right, that's about the same as the other side, I think. So I shall get the scales and see what it weighs. Place your bets. Write it in the comments. What do you think Hilda will weigh? And what do you think the weight distribution will be? So we'll go in front to back in balance. Obviously 50-50 would be perfect, but 50-50 is not going to happen. And this is without me in it as well. Would make a big difference if I was in it. Yeah. Overall weight in kilograms and weight distribution in percentage. Write them in the comments at the beginning here. Straight away now. Pause the video, write it down, and we'll have a look and see who was closest at the end. I mean, there's no way of knowing that people weren't cheating and that they didn't just watch it to the end and then guess, but yeah. Right, so I've brought my little scales in, and yeah, it's very light. Oh no, it's not on yet. So these are the pads. Make sure there's no grit underneath. I've set the tyre pressures to 16 front and 24 rear, but that sounds very light, but it is a very light car. So I will see how it drives. So if I pop the front down, it's alright if they move. In fact, it's preferable. There we go. So I'll just pop the back up and we'll see what the numbers are. Right, let's let the jack down and see where she's at. Moment of truth, 753. Not bad. Oh yeah, I'm happy with that. So what's the front to rear? $35.65. I literally gave that as my example. $35.65. Wow, so 65% of the weight is on the back. But the cross weight isn't bad at all. Look at that. So the left hand side has slightly more weight on it at the moment than the right hand side, but the cross weight is, it appears to be the rear left that's causing it. I wonder what could be on the rear left. Brum brum noises, maybe. That's not very heavy really, but carbs are on the left, exhausts on the left, alternators on that side, or that's quite near the centre. I mean, we're talking a kilo, so yeah, it probably is that. But that's really good, 753. And it's got everything in it. Seats are in a, no carpet, so we're probably going to be more like 760 when all the carpet and underlay goes in, and then with a full tank, maybe up to sort of 770, but yeah, even so. That's really good. Oh, Hilda's first oil change. They grow up so fast. Well, it's not the first oil change because this engine must have done 122,000 miles now. So it's very much not its first oil change, but it's the first oil change I've done on it since it went on the road. And you can tell by looking at the colour of the oil, even though it's not done many miles. Yeah, this will be the first one. And then to go on, a genuine oil filter. A genuine Hillman... What? Oh yeah. That is a genuine oil filter for this car. You'll have to excuse the camera. It's... God, there's proper bird fighting going on up there. Yeah, the camera is... well, the tripod is loose. It's had its day. Oh, yeah, that's a bit manky. I have just the stuff to put in it though. This is my oil of choice for this car. This isn't a sponsored video, in fact. Yeah, I'm nothing to do with them. But the reason I like this oil, you can get other brands. You can now. This is one of the first ones I found, but it's a 1040 with a high concentration of ZDDP, which stands for zinc dilithium disulfate. Yeah, and basically it cakes everything in like this little filmy layer of zinc, which is good for cold start because it means it's protected, and it's also good for old school engines like this, where this isn't a roller rocker engine. They did do roller rocker VTR engines, but this isn't one of them. And yeah, you know, this car is direct lifter on camshaft type gear. So yeah, that kind of thing works. The only reason they stopped putting this stuff in engines, well, partially because engines were getting less and less, working with less and less friction because of advanced construction methods, but also because catalytic converters don't like that stuff, that ZDDP. But this doesn't have a catalytic converter anymore, so win-win. Luckily, I'm fitted an oil cap that is easily accessible because this job used to be a lot harder. I can't actually remember how many litres this takes, but it's not many. In fact, how many's left in this? Let's chuck this in first and see what happens. See how close we get. I think it's something stupid like 4 litres. Spilt a bit already. There we go. There we go. I'm filling up through my new oil filler cap hole thing. This is exciting times. Let's check the level. Oh yeah, 2/3 the way up. Of course I haven't started the engine yet. When I do that, the oil filter will fill up. And that'll take some of it. Well, that's just under the maximum. I reckon when I start it, it'll move back down to about 1/3. So before I start it, I'm going to change the spark plugs while the engine's coolish, because they need doing as well. Yeah, I haven't made access amazing, if I'm honest. A slight oversight on my part perhaps, but I can get to 2 of the plugs from here. One of them I'll get to from inside, and the third one, well, we'll wait and see. These have been in here a while. I think they don't look too bad. Yeah, they're a bit black, but not too bad. They're Super 4s, so I mean technically they've got tons of life left in them, but it has started popping and farting a bit. So I'm just gonna remove all doubt. Those plugs have been in there a fair while and will have been through the running in process and the setting up process and all the trials and everything that didn't quite work, and they were in there when it ran out of fuel a few times for various reasons. Let's see what this one's like. So I removed from cylinder, or actually cylinder number 4, the one at the cam belt end is number 4 in Citroen Parlay. I removed a Super 4 plug, okay, which is not horrendous, but not fantastic. I mean, it's not jet black, which is what I thought it was going to be. And from number 3, which is the second one in from the end, I removed a black Bosch Super 4 plug. I vaguely remember fitting these. What I don't remember fitting is what was in number 2, which is a Valeo F70H, which is quite black. Understandable, as that is the wrong plug for this engine. I had a load of these Valeo plugs kicking about. I bought some in a job lot years ago, and I've also put one in number 1. So 2 of the cylinders are running 2 of these, and interesting. I don't remember why. I didn't even realise they were. It might be there was a running issue the car had when we first got it going, which turned out to be a fueling cock-up. We put the fuel pressure. Well, it's one of those cheap fuel pressure regulators with a little wheel on it. It's in the bin now, but that was messing things about. And I was thinking it was spark because the fuel seemed fine. But so I remember changing some plugs, but I obviously, well, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you think, oh, I'm going to do this, or I better remember to put that back. I'll just check this and see if it makes a difference. And then, how many years have passed? They've been in there for the 2,000 miles, so yeah, I've noticed when it's idling at the moment, it's popping and farting and banging. It would just be sitting there ticking over, and it'd just go, you know. That hopefully was because of that. So I'll put the rest of the Denso ones in and see how she runs. Right, plugs all changed. Fire it up, make sure it starts okay, and then check the oil level. Well, switch the engine off first and then check the oil level. It is Wednesday, my dudes. Yes, so it's about 7:15 in the morning on Wednesday, so it's the 27th. The track day is tomorrow. I drove the Imp home last night. Didn't get a chance to film the rest of what I was doing on it, but basically it involved improving that engine cover. And what else did I spend my time doing? Oh, obviously bleeding the brakes, doing the suspension, setting the steering, setting the tracking, corner weighting. You saw all that. I'm standing on something that's rocking here. It's making me feel sick. Yeah, it dawned on me that I had to just crack on because I wouldn't get it done if I kept stopping to film. But there wasn't a huge amount of sort of new stuff to show as Reed's going over things. And I was very, very keen to drive it. I didn't leave here till about 9:15 last night. And it was 7:15 this morning, so 10 hours later I'm back. Drove it home, did about 12 miles all told. On the whole, good. Engine driving very nicely at the moment, gear change fine, steering lovely, actually better than it was. So getting rid of some of that camber has really improved the feel in the dead ahead position. We did have some gremlins though. The ride is worse. I think because I've shimmed those rear springs, I've increased the preload on the rear springs. And because I've increased the preload on the rear springs, they're stiffer, but the dampers are pretty much at full extension because they're made for lowered cars. So I'm going to have to get some different dampers, ones that are slightly longer reach. Because those dampers are designed to work with different shocks. And I don't really want to lower it again. It drives better being a bit higher up. For normal road use, I'm sure for a track it probably would suit it, being on its arse. But It seems to drive better. It has much more feel. You throw it around a bit more. It's a bit more controllable. So I don't want to change the height, but the dampers may need changing. The bigger problem was the offside front brake, which semi seized on, which I knew because it started pulling to the right. And yeah, it's got very direct communicative steering, the Imp, and if you get any problems or anything like anything that compromises it whatsoever, you feel it through the wheel. And yeah, it started pulling to the right, the wheel's getting very hot, stopped on the way back, smoke pouring out the arch. Great. So this morning, before customers' cars come in, I've got to pull the caliper off and try and cycle the piston a few times and see if I can get a bit of Vaseline or something in it and get the corrosion out if there is any in there. They're a pain, those calipers. They did this before. They've already been rebuilt once. I'm sick of them, to be honest. I'm ready to ditch them and put some different calipers on it, some that don't break every 5 minutes. And the only other thing was the full beam LED. Oh, that's bright. You can't use that. I'm going to have to put blue tack over that or something, or tint it or get rid of it somehow, because that is bright. Yeah, that's not good. You can't use full beam at night because you blind yourself. Well, it's like someone's put full beam on you. Other than that, quite happy. It's quieter than it was. Still very loud, but it's quieter than it was. So it's more just sort of refinements and things now. So I'm going to crack on in a minute and quickly grab some breakfast and then pull it in here, pull the caliper off, and we'll see if I can cycle it on the car first, just unhook it. But yeah, and then later on today I've got to try and get some more test miles in. I can't work on tonight because taking the kids to football tonight, so I can't work on. I've got maybe a couple of hours tomorrow morning, but I need to get work done on sort of customers' cars as well, because they didn't get much done at all yesterday. So yeah, that's where we are. I don't know how much more I'll film between now and tomorrow. I don't think I'm allowed to film going around the track at Goodwood tomorrow, but I'll see if I can film something of some sort tomorrow. I can't promise there'll be that much or anything, but hopefully, assuming it's there and assuming it doesn't die, assuming I don't die, then yeah, we will. I've got my helmet as well, so yeah, you can see me wearing my new bonts. Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. So thanks for following so far. Let's see what the next stage brings.